Given the typo, I think I'm going to just go ahead and we'll start. It's supposed to be 6:45 and I put it down as 6:15, and I apologize for my error, my bad. Sorry about that. A number of you have been waiting for quite a while and apparently enjoying chatting with each other, so it's good to have you all here at this time. Our temperature is 29. The dew point is 23. So, I don't know, barometer 2985, which is low a little bit, but steady. So I'm guessing that we will, they keep telling us we're going to see snow. I mean, yesterday they said 2 to 3 feet. We got none. Today during the day, I got home from Delta, actually. I had to go all the way up there to capture my calendar, which I'd left behind at a meeting on Saturday. And there was just little, I don't know what they call those things. They're like oversized grains of sand or something. They just make a little noise on the windshield and then disappear. It was raining at certain points, which meant that it was snowing, but the temperature was above freezing, so it was being kind of nice. So let's go through and take a look at these. I apologize again for the typo. I guess I got to read what I write. Okay. Close. I'm not going to insert ads. Okay, John Hummel Newell, I think is the first one who posted. VE5JHN, hello David and all Augies. Tom Cook is present. Alexei Zvered says hi all. Optical Man Jeff, hi Dave and all Augies from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where it is 34 degrees and rain. This ADHD live thinking, there's a typo in the schedule. Yes, there was. I'm looking at it right here. It says 6:15 p.m. So we'll just go ahead and start. I sat down a few minutes ago and then discovered that we were doing some crazy things with the time here. Okay, Leo is here from a chilly Albany, Oregon, or maybe it's just the cold I have. I got that ICOM SM50 mic, and the reports I'm getting are very favorable. Very good. Tom Cook, he's at least as old as I am. Give him a few minutes. Well, this year I am going to pass a very important milestone, for Ham especially. I am going to turn, in July, 73. So for a year anyway, when I say 73, it's either my age or I'm giving you best wishes. So I'm still 72 and a half. That's old enough to where I have to pay required minimum distributions from my retirement savings. And I did the first one already. Oh, well, that's just the way it goes. I tell you all this time, save everything you can, and then when you get old, they do their best to take it away from you. Medicare, everybody says, oh, that's free for seniors. That's not true. It costs money. We pay, between the two of us, the Part B premiums have gone up. The Medicare supplement's gone up. The drug costs have gone up. So, I don't know, it's about $1,000 a month. So anyway, here we are. Now, Leo is having trouble with the Innovato ham clock setup, but it so far can't network with my Android phone. You know more about that than I do. I'll have to try that, I think. And ADHD Life, you're correct. I start a quarter of. Lefty, good evening, Dave and Augie's 54 and windy here in Davenport. Leo says it only took 1 week to get that mic taken advantage of the depressed Japanese yen. Very good. Leo Gustafsson also, I fired off a message to the FCC to check the progress of the ICOM PW2 amplifier I'm looking at getting. Let's talk about FCC approval, or what I should call FCC type acceptance. It's not really approving, considering they gave type acceptance to the Baofeng UV5R, which a lousy radio. The way you get your FCC approval is by going to a designated testing lab and giving them your product, and they take all their measurements and file the paperwork. And you can actually look at the paperwork online. If you look in any handheld, in the back, it will give the FCC ID. Now, the FCC ID is either composed of 3 letters representing the manufacturer or 5 letters representing the manufacturer. And then the remainder of it is the ID of the actual reg. The Chinese companies, by and large, have 5-letter IDs. So take the first 5. You just search for FCC ID number, and it'll bring up a page on the FCC website where you can enter this number, and it will pop up with a list of every last document that was submitted. And they have pictures of the outside, pictures of the inside. They have, various graphs from various tests using an oscilloscope. And the Chinese tried to play a game. The FCC kind of shut them down. Tried to play a game saying, well, if we make another radio that's kind of similar to this one, that same type acceptance should apply. And the FCC says, no, it doesn't. Now, it's interesting. Boeing Aircraft has been making 737s for what, 40 years? And they have a type acceptance for the 737. They're very careful with every modification they make to this, that the human airplane interface stays the same. Now, there's some exceptions, like updated avionics and stuff like that. They all have glass panels now. They don't have the old steam gauges, what they called them. But they've been doing that and doing it and doing it to the point where it's ridiculous. The 737 was originally designed to serve short routes. It had 4 small jet engines under its wing, 4 or 2, I think. And those engines keep getting larger and larger and larger to the point where they've actually had to kind of modify the bottom of the intake nacelle so that it doesn't drag on the ground. And they've done just all kinds of strange things to the 737s. And I know there are some YouTube commentators, some of whom I think are really very good at what they do, like one Brown, saying they ought to just stop doing that with the 737, come up with either a clean sheet of paper or start with the 757, which is a similar aircraft and is much more modern, and that they ought to put things in them, and start from there. You'd be a little higher off the ground, so your engines are not going to create a problem and stuff like that. But Boeing, I think, decides what it wants to decide. The MAX airplane, what they did was, there was an error in the flight control code. and it would do auto trim, but it wouldn't stop trimming. And it would keep trimming for pitch down, keep trimming and trimming and trimming, and no matter how much you held back, you couldn't keep the airplane in the air, and they lost 2 airplanes that way. Well, turns out there is a way to turn off that automatic trim and bring it back to where it ought to be. But that's not in the pilot's handbook because it's different from the original 737, and Boeing was afraid that they would have to do actual hands-on skill training or simulator training to get them to understand this feature called MCAS. And so this approach of theirs has killed 300 people just in those 2 airplane crashes. And it's, in my opinion, inexcusable. And now they have this one here where on that door side, you could pop it up partly and pull it out partly so that you could do whatever repair you needed to do. For example, put a new seal in around the door. And that's what they did. If you pull it all the way off, then that triggers an inspection when it's put back together and make sure all the bolts are in place. If you merely pull it back, it does not trigger that inspection. And apparently that's what happened. It came to them from their subcontractor, Spirit Air, with the bolts in place, and they wanted to, at the Boeing factory, replace the seal. So they pulled it partially off, did the seal repair, push it back in, it kind of snaps down in, and didn't put the bolts back. At least that's what Alaska Airlines is saying. I mean, it's just an incredible case. These are incredibly complicated airplanes, and when you try and rush things through on a machine so complex, it doesn't work very well. Okay, let's go on. Okay, good evening here in Davenport. Where am I? Oh, we were talking about the FCC, the paperwork. Basically, what you do is you file the paperwork, and it's put online in the system. So if the manufacturer says it's okay, then it's okay. There's no checking for veracity. The FCC does not, sample a few radios to see if these check labs are doing what they're supposed to be doing. There is an SEC certified check lab in China. And I've looked at the paperwork to see what's been done on them. And it's very interesting. I now do this on every radio. I just got this radio in the mail. It's TID radio. It's a dual band FM only radio that is actually dinky. It's a little tiny thing. And it's the TD-H3, and if you pull the battery off, and I'm not sure I can do this. There we go. Right there in the back, it tells you, let's see if I can get it to focus on that. Nope. Oh well. It gives you the model, TD-H3, voltage, it's always 7.4. All the Chinese radios are 7.4. The FCC idea, 2A4F8. No, B. 2A4FB. That is the company code, TID radio. And then the remaining digits, TD831, are specific to the model. Now what's interesting about this is that usually what's after the manufacturer's name is the actual model number, TDH3, but it's got this other. And as part of this review, I will check the FCC paperwork. So far, it appears to be a nice little radio. But I'll give it all the usual tests. I'll check it for harmonics. The last TID radio I reviewed, I told people not to buy because the second harmonic from 2 meters actually had more power in it than the fundamental did. So there's not much point in having a radio like that. So, okay. So the progress you have to check with ICOM, because they are the people who are shepherding it through the test lab, and I'm sure there's a certified test lab in Japan. They need to get that through. And then somebody at the FCC just uploads the documents. There's not a lot of review there. Bill Myers, KE0OG. Hello, David All Augies. Chris, G7VEO. Think the start time should be 1:45, not 1:15. You are absolutely correct. And I apologize for that little mess up there. My bad. Bill Myers assures him he's right. Chuck Schreiber, good evening, Dave, and all Augies, and 5 KVO from the Hill Country, South Texas. Nice evening and currently 64. Lefty says, I guess no chat tonight. Oh, yes, there is. Leo said, funny thing happened to me the other day when I was driving the bus. One of my passengers' name was Chung Wang. Almost spat out my coffee. I don't know that. Is that a prominent Asian actor? Could be. David AC3HT, good evening, Dave, and hello to all Augies. Checking in from the mountains of northeastern Pennsylvania. Current temp is 39 degrees, 52 relative humidity. Possible nor'easter for early next week. I have lived through a grand total of 1 nor'easter. I flew into Washington Dulles, and the airport, or the hotel I was at, was immediately off the airport, and the meeting venue was across the street from the hotel. So the nor'easter came through the first night I got there, and I went over to the meeting. I thought surely they'd cancel it, but they did not. So with only about a third of the people there, we started our meeting. Well, the next day, things were cleared out a lot more, and a lot more people showed up. And they basically threw out everything we'd done on the first day and started over, which was bothersome, but, you know, they paid me to do that, so if that's what they want. And then going back to the airport, the only flights that were leaving were the ones going west, because the whole eastern seaboard was blocked in with everything. So I got my airport out on time and my airplane out on time. But boy, there were sure a lot of people stuck there. A nor'easter, for those of you who are not familiar, of course, we designate winds by where they come from, not where they're going. That's old tradition going back to the earliest of wood boats with sails, as my dad said, wooden boats and iron men. But anyway, you talk about the wind by where it comes from. And so from the northeast, meaning coming down from Maine and that area up there, from Canada up above, it's not a common wind direction. Wind direction tends to go to the east from the west across the U.S., give or take many degrees as it does that. And so when the wind shifts like that, it just really takes moisture from the Atlantic Ocean, from the Gulf Stream, which is warmer water than the air above it, and it just plasters the eastern seaboard with snow. We had about 2 feet that one night. So yeah, that can be a problem if there's a nor'easter coming in. Okay, Leo says, hi Dave, 8 Baldrick. Good evening to all from K9ETE in southeast Wisconsin, where it's 50 degrees and thunderstorms. Make sure you've got your lightning arresters in place. And probably, if you know it's in the air, a good idea to just disconnect it. Just disconnect your main radio. James KI50EB says, hello, Mr. Casler. Hello to you. And Bill Myers, KA8GIM, 40 degrees in northern Wisconsin with 0.18 inches of rain so far. James KI50EB, 70s northwest Oklahoma, sun went down, now 50 already. Zach Yeager, 75 degrees in South Texas. Lefty says, evening Dave. Ryan V, hello all. Jeep Boy 5B, hello all. AC8NM, long time watching, first time chatting. Well, welcome aboard. Glad to have you here. And hope you will keep coming. Hope you will watch my videos regularly. I put out 3 videos a week, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Right now we're going through a bunch of reviews. And one of them's, well, I've just been reviewing. I've got one more thing to review about the Chameleon F loop. And there are 3 configurations, and they sent me the materials for 2 of them. But they also sent me an automatic remote tuner for the thing. Now, one of the gotchas on this is that this antenna is not waterproof. You can't leave it outside. But you can get it away from you and tune it, and it will, as long as you hold down the key on your radio so it's got a steady tone going out, the thing will find it and tune to it, which is very nice. I set the thing up just right here on my desk next to me, lowered my radio to 5 watts, so there's very little power out on the thing, and started to work FT8, and it worked fine. Did some whisper with it, worked fine, and overall I'm impressed. As far, if you get, there's 3 versions. The first version comes with traditional coax as the loop. The second one comes with some metal tubes that are inflexible, so they're sturdy. That's the second one. It's a little more expensive, and it will probably work a little bit better, because it's got less ohmic resistance in it. And then the third version is actually, instead of a 3-foot loop, a 4-foot in diameter loop, made of coax, and it has a little bit bigger feed center to it. Now, when I set the thing up here, I found it extremely easy to tune. Now, remember, it is a very high Q device, so it only tunes over a very narrow portion of the band, about 10 kilohertz, give or take, depending on what your band is. More on the higher bands, less on the lower bands. There is, on the first variety, you can get a second loop on it, so you have 2 loops. Now, I made the statement that that's the first time I've seen an American manufacturer do that. It's common in Europe. And I got an immediate email from someone who said, you ought to look at such and such an antenna company. They have a double loop for theirs. So the guy that I was talking to actually, I think he must know somebody at the company, because somebody at the company contacted me. And I said, well, I'd sure like to test that antenna. And they said, great, but first we'd really rather have you test this other antenna. So it came 2 days later. It came yesterday. So I'm going to have another portable antenna to test. Been testing lots of antennas lately. Usually that's summer work, but I guess it's February. We can set this up on the deck out back and make it work. Yeah. Oh, there's one thing I want to talk about, if I may. I got an email from Steve Felkner, KE5SF. Steve is on a crusade. His crusade is to eliminate the $35 fee that the FCC charges for about anything. And I've tried to tell him this before, but I don't think he believes me. He thinks that he can get somebody sufficiently outraged about the fee to have it changed to zero. I think that's not going to happen. When I first got into ham radio, there was definitely a fee. You had to send a fee with your testing information and stuff like that. And when you went down to the FCC office to upgrade, you had to pay a fee. And I think in today's dollars, it would be more than the $35. Well, over the years, the FCC was looking at their operations, and the fees on ham radio are not very big, $7 or $8. And so they did this calculation and said, it costs us more to collect the fee than we keep from all the fees. So they were losing money by charging fees. And so they just eliminated fees for ham radio. They even eliminated the fees for the vanity call signs. And everybody, I think, kind of got used to that. It's very unusual for a government agency to not charge money for things. I mean, look at it. The Forest Service, the National Park Service. I have a lifetime pass for National Park Service that I got by virtue of being old. And then they changed it. There's a $10 fee with it now. But the net is this. Congress, believe it or not, underneath all the bickering that you see at Congress, go down a level and see what happens that nobody cares about at a national news level. And people are working together, actually, quite well. And one of the things they came up with a couple years ago was this idea that every agency needs to determine how much it costs them to process whatever, applications, changes of address, ship registration, whatever it may be. Figure out how much it costs them and charge that to the public. Why are they doing that? The federal government, the state government, and your local and city governments all have a finance problem. They need to get money in order for money to go out. People in the United States are used to services for free. For example, the roads you drive on is paid for, theoretically, by the gas tax. So if you use the roads, you pay to have them maintained. And big vehicles that didn't get very good fuel economy would pay more. But people knew that was a tax. There's really, I think, only one state that still does that properly, and that's California. And that's why the gas prices out there are sky high. It's because people are paying the actual expenses of what it takes to build roads for them. Roads are not cheap, especially if you're putting in a freeway or something like that. They're doing some major repair work on Highway 50 or Highway 550 going north from here. They were at it all last summer and finally gave up for the winter, and they'll be back in the spring and finish it up. And they've been working forever on Highway 50 near here too. It's kind of crazy. But the point is, all these services have to be paid for, but the people in charge want to create the illusion of lowering taxes. So here's what they do to do that. They lower the taxes and increase the fees. Now, given that the FCC's job is to regulate the airwaves and wireline telephone and cellular phone and a few other things, radio stations, so on and so forth, but not cable so much, you'd think you wouldn't need a huge agency to do that. Well, of course it's huge. All government agencies are huge. And you spend a lot of money doing that. Now, the FCC discovered 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when cell phones became popular, that they could auction access to these frequencies. This was a really wild idea, and a lot of hams got scared, thinking that they would auction off ham radio frequencies. They didn't, but, well, they did. They took a few little chips here and there. But they would auction these, so all the mobile people, you know, a mobile phone company is a license to print money. It does not cost nearly what they charge to actually run that phone. But then the Treasury said, wow, what a great revenue source. So the FCC spends a lot of its time and attention seeing how much money it can generate by auctioning blocks of spectrum. Okay. Now, Congress passed this law, like I said, that each agency had to charge what it costs them to process an application on average. And the on average for the FCC was $50. And so they applied that across the board. And the ARRL squawked, and other hams just complained to high heaven. And so the FCC, as a favor to the hams, lowered it to $35. Now, I'll just tell you this outright. There is no way on God's green earth that anybody's going to change that. It's $35 for the hams, period. And be lucky it's not more. The reason that it will not change is because Congress wants the FCC. Now, granted, it takes in all that auction money, but doesn't leave any at the FCC. They don't get to charge a fee or anything. They want the FCC administrative staff to pay for itself. They want all of the federal bureaucracies to pay for themselves. And so the fees go up. The fees go up. There is a part of the California Constitution that says that the state government will not charge any tuition for the state universities, like Cal State Berkeley or UCLA, or where I graduated with my master's from Cal State Northridge. So, when I first went to college, for the very first time, I missed pure tuition, which was free, but I got hit with fees. It's $40. Well, the fees kept going up and up and up and up and up till it was $200 or $300 a semester. By the time I left there and went on my Mormon mission to the Philippines and then went to Brigham Young. And now the fees have gotten to be exorbitant. And I don't think anybody has successfully made the argument that the things they are calling fees are in actuality tuition. But that's California's problem, not mine. Here in Colorado, the nearest state college, they call it a university now. Everything's got to be a university, you know. Can't be a college anymore. But Mesa State, which is now Colorado Mesa University, is a very popular school. Grand Junction is definitely a university town. There's a lot of good stuff going on there, but they, unlike others, do not charge all that much. They charge about what it costs to run the place. And so people can go up there, go to school, get a very good education, and not be saddled by huge debts. Now, on debts, I told my kids, absolutely, positively, you will never take out a loan to go to school. If you need money, talk to me. Well, my wife and I were separated at that point, divorced, and she told them the opposite. It took Jennifer about 5 years to pay off her loans. She didn't take big loans. John, I think, is still paying them. His problem. He chose not to follow my advice. I would recommend that if you are in a position where you need to get a loan to go to school, go to a state school. Get a fine education at your state's finest school, finest public school, because they're just as good as any other. There's no way that you could say that Cal Berkeley, which is one of the top universities in the United States, is better than Stanford. I mean, they're both really good schools. But Stanford is private. It's a place for rich kids. Now, you get an ordinary kid who goes there to get his engineering degree, and he's going to come out with $200,000 of loans to pay. Whereas if he went to Cal Berkeley, he'd come out with maybe $50,000 or something like that. The same thing we saw happen when around the 1960s, companies started paying their employees doctor bills. Now, what the average family looked at was not what the doctor bill cost, but what their share of the doctor bill was. And so with the insurance companies paying money in, the market just ballooned because the people who were using the healthcare system had no idea what was being paid under the scene. Same with drugs. So economics is a funny thing. Economics just will tell you in our society that wherever there is money, there will be people to serve that market and absorb all of the money. And that's what's happening on so many different things now. But I just wanted to point this out, that on the ham radio $35 fee, one, we're lucky it isn't 50. Two, you have to pay it to renew your license, okay, once every 10 years. You don't have to pay it to just to renew, to change your address. But you do have to pay to renew, $35. That's $3.50 a year. That's a penny a day. Penny a day. Okay, now for new hams, there are hams that cannot afford it. And a lot of clubs will give scholarships to these people. and pay their initial fee to get them in. There is a school of thought that if you pay some money for something, it means more to you than if it's free. So, I don't know. Pays your money, takes your choice. But that was something I just had to get off my chest, because the federal government asking $35, they're asking us for less money than it costs to process our requests. I mean, it's not free to tend a computer that issues call signs. There's a person behind it somewhere. It's not free. So, like I said, a lot of clubs will provide the $35 as a scholarship, if you will, for new hams. We need to tell people up front that there's some modest, and that is a modest fee for that. And we pay fees for everything. That's why sales taxes are so high. Good grief, in Montrose, I think it's over 9%. And they caught me on my airplane. I had purchased it in Arizona and brought it up here and domiciled it in Colorado. And the state said, "Dear Dave, you owe a sales tax on that. How much did it cost you?" So I sent them a copy of the receipt, and they sent me a tax bill for the Colorado county tax, which it's much less. The state level tax on that thing was, I think I paid $300 or $400 for the thing. The state tax is not as high as the county tax, which is not as high as all the city taxes. But again, this is why we pay a high sales tax, to lower our taxes. Right. Okay. Anyway, I would recommend that you change your expectations. Remember, joining the league costs more money now. I think it's $59. And I have several times said, that's a tank of gas. Can you afford a tank of gas a year to send to the league? Sure you can. That we ought to do that. And perhaps with some of our younger hams, we may need to provide a scholarship so that they can join the league. But the league, of course, needs money, and they've been hit by inflation, as with everything else. That's why they went to giving you a break, so to speak, if you just read your magazines online. Because then they don't have to print them, because the printing that they do on them is very high quality. Okay, let's, I'm July, but I'm actually a Leo. I was born late in July. Okay, so, David, checking in from the mountains of northeastern Pennsylvania, current temp 39, 52 relative humidity, possible nor'easter, okay. Chip W, W3BEW, hi all from a beautiful starlit Smoky Mountains, North Carolina night. Sounds nice. Leo says, too soon to tell, to Lefty. You are absolutely correct about the typo, my bad. Oh, that's my own comment. I don't need to read that. Leo says, hi Dave. 8 Baldrick, good evening to all from K9 ETE in southeast Wisconsin, where it's 50 degrees and thunderstorms. Have already gone, I'm not sure. Getting down there. James, KI50EB, says hello. Bill Myers, KAGIM, 40.18. Now, I know I have read that, so I'm not sure where I am. Anyways, Zach Yeager, I don't think I've read your comment yet. 75 degrees South Texas. Lefty says, evening, hello all. Whoops. Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to go down here and jump back in. Far West Missouri, see that? Randall Rash, KR5 EEE, howdy Augies. The music needs you. Best wishes. Lefty July. I am born in July, but I'm a Leo. So I'm born 28th of July. I missed Harry Potter's birthday by 3 days. So Elias Acevedo says, hello, Mr. OG from Tijuana, Mexico. And I have actually been there. Ivan Mundaka Vasquez, saludos desde Peru. I think that means greetings from Peru. Phil M. couple in Colorado. I'm going to be 75 in May. Happy birthday. Yeah, that's 3/4 of a century. Eric Sund. Hello, Dave and fellow Augies. From flight level 370. That's 37,000 feet. He's up there. Eric Sund, never miss an episode. OBB says, hello, OG from the Central Coast of California, where I suspect you're getting some rain. Question, any tips on 9-to-1 EFRW 71-foot inverted V setup? I have not seen that anywhere. Now, in a recent video, I showed building from scratch a 4-band tuned dipole. Was a fan dipole, worked fine. And so I don't really know what you're doing. If you can send me, send it to askdave@arrl.org. Ask Dave, all one word, at arrl.org. Send me a link to that. Okay, height above ground, that sort of thing. Well, the feed point, ideally, of an inverted V will be a half wavelength high, and that creates a problem with multi-band antennas because the half wavelength is different on every antenna. So just get it up to where it seems right to you and go ahead and operate on it. Leo, cool, thanks for the information about FCC approval. However, the ICOM is Japanese, I think. Of course it is. The company is Japanese. Most of the parts are built in China, as is true for many of the things. But Japanese impose a very tight quality control on what they do because there is this feeling amongst Japanese suppliers that they're not just representing themselves, they're representing Japan. And so they want their equipment to be of the very highest quality, and it is. Now, the Japanese manufacturers have been around long enough that I think they have 3-letter manufacturer codes on the FCC website. Jerry Moore, hi Dave from Jerry, VE7BDM from Victoria, British Columbia. I've been there. It is beautiful. I suspect you're getting a lot of rain. WB9VVH, hi from Alton, Tennessee, from Joe. James says, type certificate data sheet. Thank you for the official name. Everybody's got these official names. And, you know, you get 2 different government agencies, and they've got a form that does identically the same thing, but they call it something different. So this was a real problem on a job I did in Washington, D.C. IBM was helping the DOD accounting office bring some order to their 100-some-odd accounting systems. And they did have issues with the same thing being called something different by the Army and the Navy, or the Army and the Navy calling something one thing, but it means something different, the Navy and the Army. And so they took an approach called an ontology, which was gross overkill for this particular one. What they really needed was a common lexicon. And I realize that's part of the step to an ontology. But anyway, I worked on that for a while, and it was a massive, massive project. Okay, Mark says hello. Zach, hello from rainy day Tucson, Arizona. Yeah, you guys can really get some serious rain down there. Tom Cook, the original 100 series was nice as it had turbojet, no fan, engines, and were considerably faster. The pilots at America West loved them. I miss those days. Oh, that's talking about the 737. David AC3HT, who has somehow figured out how to make his name appear green, says, Leo, the SM50 is a nice mic. I run the SM30 here, and it also has nice audio. And Alexei provides some information in Japanese or Chinese, or it's not Korean. It is a language that uses, oh, come on, stop that. It's a language that uses, what do they call them? Not kanji, but a Chinese character can stand for an entire word. And there is a name for doing that. I'm just going to go over here to translate and see if it'll do anything with this. Oh, this is what it is. Let me change the screen. So there. What he put down is hello, just hello. And it is Chinese simplified. So very nice to have you on board. Very nice indeed. Okay. Basically, QA failed in the safety endeavor. Should have been caught, but the page corner was cut. Yeah. Well, that happens. And one of the problems, these large aircraft are among the most complex machines known to mankind. And you put two people up there, and they're supposed to take it from one place to another with 150 people at a time. And there has to be a high degree of automation in order for this to work. Airbus is really big into automation. And there was a story here about a year ago of an Airbus, a normal narrow-body Airbus, that the pilots decided to cancel the takeoff, and the Airbus overruled them and took off anyway. Now, Boeing doesn't do that. Boeing defers to the human judgment. Airbus defers to the machine judgment. And there are people who are violently on either side. Okay? Those who fly Boeing aircraft think that's the only way to do it. Those who fly Airbus think that's the only way to do it. I can remember, and most of you can too, when in addition to Boeing, we had McDonnell Douglas and MacDac was McDonnell and Douglas before that, and Lockheed. Lockheed tried for a wide-body passenger jet and came out with the L-1011. And I know a guy who worked on it. He was my uncle. And he lived near Burbank, and that's where they worked on it. And the problem with the L-1011 was not the airplane. It was the engines. The engines were 2 years late. And by then, the market had coalesced around MacDac, Boeing, the Airbus was still kind of a little bit on the horizon. But Boeing took the market over. Right now, Alaskan Airlines runs an all Boeing fleet, I think all Boeing 737, because it's just so much easier from a maintenance point of view when all the planes are the same. But United does a mixture of Boeing and Airbus. Okay, so they failed. They sure did. Chris Goodman, K0BLU, hello from rainy St. Cloud, Minnesota, where it's 36 degrees Fahrenheit with 95 relative humidity and 0.62 inches of rain. Well, it'll be green. Let's see, James said the FAA inspectors aren't happy until you aren't happy, as the saying goes, yes. You know, it's like so many things. There are so many rules. This is true of driving. I mean, it's true of anything. If the officiators want to get you, there's always a way. There's always a way. And yes, they can write a ticket for 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. It's not often done because it makes them the laughing stock of the country. But the FAA, this is the Federal Air Regulations and the Airman's Information Manual. I just want you to note how thick that is. And let's see, there are over 1,000 pages in this manual. It's actually printed in color too in some spots. Half of this is the FAA regulations. Then they have something called the Airman's Information Manual, which is sort of the implementation of the regulation. So if you want to know how air traffic control works, it's got everything in there for how to do it. Now, the AIM, the Airman's Information Manual, is not technically law, but from a practical point of view, it sure is. Anyway, I had to spend a lot of time reading in there in order to pass my written test. Okay. Ray Chase, Chuck at NEKS. Setting up new first station at farm, good. No trees or other ways to elevate antennas. Elmer suggested I start with the Hustler, which is a vertical. Radials must be where brome is burned. I'm not sure what that means. I would put it somewhere else. If you're going to do vertical, yes, it would work. There are many different kinds of verticals. One that's a little less expensive is the, comes out of the UK, plastic thing, DX Commander. Get the original edition. It's a fan vertical, and it works well. Now, another thing that I've got a video on this. Just look on my channel for mast. Let's go over to the screen and look at that. And go to my channel. Okay. And we'll look for mast. Okay, a 30-foot mast using Home Depot parts. That'll cost you somewhat over $100 for that mast. Is there a show all? Let's look at this show all. Okay. Okay, reference station, build a simple 20-foot mast for wire antennas. And that is video number 250. Okay, so look for Ask Dave video number 250, and that will show you how you can go down to Home Depot and by taking 2 pieces of chain link fence steel top rail, they've got a crimp on one end and a fitting on the other, so they go right into each other. Well, you can just take that and turn it vertically, and it'll work for 20 feet. I wouldn't try it for 30 feet. It's too wiggly. But 20 feet works fine. You'll need to guy it, of course. Now, if you ask somebody at Home Depot where the concrete form stakes are, it'll lead you to a place with like 2 foot long or 3 foot long iron stakes that you can pound into the ground. You can get them in the form of cut pieces of rebar. You can get them to where they're just black steel. That's the kind I get. And you need 3 of them, and then you need some rope or cord. Don't use parachute cord because it stretches. You don't want anything that stretches. But you can get from DX Engineering or somebody like that some UV resistant black cord, and you can put that mast up for not very much money. And you can also put another one up, string an antenna between it. 20 feet is not ideal, but it works. I know it works because I've tried it out here in the backyard a bunch of times. So anyway, that gives you a little bit of a feeling there. Okay, a hustler. Radials must be where BROME is burned. I would not trust copper that's left there. The high heat of the copper will change the nature of the copper and make it brittle. And so just stepping there will snap those radials. Uninsulated wire is okay. I recommend that your radials be made from insulated wire. I also recommend that you use stranded wire. It is easy to get at Home Depot. Where you go down the aisle to where the wire is, you can buy a roll of about 500 feet of single strand wire. I think I have my sample right here. I do have it. I see it. There it is right here. This is THHN nylon or whatever. Anyway, this right here shows the strands, okay? It's stranded. And it's just so much easier to work with these things. Now, I would, if I were you, go down to an automotive store and get little terminal lugs for these, for one end of all your radials, solder it to this, okay, and then lay this out on the ground. Now, the reason I recommend insulated is because there can be some fairly high voltages in these things, and you don't want those going to ground directly. So this is what I would do. Okay, so I don't recommend burying bare radials, because what you're really creating is a good ground system. And what the radials are supposed to be is the antenna's counterpoise. So it needs to do its electrical thing separate from the ground. Now, right next to the antenna, you can put a ground rod in and attach all those radials to that ground, and everything will be wonderful. Okay, and that provides some additional lightning protection. So, Leo says it's from the Everybody Have Fun Tonight, Everybody Wong Chung Tonight, a pop song from the 80s. Huh, interesting. Okay, I think that the too long screw in my stock hand mic didn't only short out the circuit board, it may have cracked it. Now, it is possible to resurrect it if you can scrape off the green varnish on top of each trace where it comes to the edge of the board, and put the board together and just put solder over those, or put a little piece of wire in it and put solder over it. With the wire, it's a little stronger afterwards, but it is something that you can do. Okay, Joseph Turner, I was looking at radio waves, end feds. They have some that are monoband and some that are multiband. What in their construction makes a difference? Well, it depends on what you do with the ballon. I've got an antenna I've not gotten to testing yet. I think I bought it myself, so no manufacturers wondering when I'm going to review it. It uses, instead of a 49-to-1 ballon, a 64-to-1 ballon. And it says that you can set it up for any band. But if you change bands, you're going to have to adjust the length a little bit. My immediate question is, why not use a 49-to-1 ballon and just have yourself a very nice multi-band antenna? You can transmit on all the bands at the same time. So anyway, that's the way they work. So yeah, I happen to like end-fed antennas. They work really well. 3 interruptions from commercials so far? Really? I am sorry. I checked something wrong then, and I don't know where it is that I can fix it while we are in going here. I apologize. I didn't realize that this thing would automatically run commercials on the live streams. Now, the replays of live streams, I do allow it to put commercials in. So, and I tried for a while. Google came out with this thing. They were telling me that I should allow commercials, mid-roll commercials in all my videos. And so I tried it. And oh, what a disaster that was. So forget that. Now, you will get a video or a commercial at the beginning of the video. And if you listen all the way through to the end, it'll go into another one. So sorry about that, but I need the money. So I've got to get it slightly commercial anyway. I'd rather you... Now, I have opened up channel memberships, so you can become a channel member. You can also go through PayPal via my website to subscribe. And it costs you either $5, $10, or $20 a month. I have nobody doing the 20. So $5 or $10 a month. And that goes on until you stop it. And then there's Patreon. Patreon is where you can choose between levels $2, $5, $10, it's either 15 or 20. I think it's 20. And there are a number of $20 patrons. Patreon is nice because I can communicate with everyone at once, and you can communicate with me without going through the askdave@arrl.org. Now, if you want to send a photograph or drawing or something like that, use the ARRL address because you can put attachments on it. In the Patreon, though, it comes up in my inbox as Patreon, okay, and those are usually the first ones I go for. Because, I mean, you people are actually supporting the channel financially, which keeps me going and so on. Now, I know a lot of people can't, and that's fine. A lot of people watch lots and lots of YouTube channels and can't possibly be a patron for all of them. You can subscribe, and please click the bell, too. So anyway, that was a roundabout way of apologizing for commercials. Now, tell me, do they just push it to later, what you see, or do they just put it right over on top of the thing? That's nasty. Leo, remote tuner, that's what I was missing with that non-resonant chameleon end-fed mini that I ultimately gave up on. Yeah, I know, there's many different ways to do things, some of which work. G&J Chapel Artworks. I have homebrewed 2-meter vertical dipole that is still grounded from its previous use and designed for 11 meters. Well, I'm glad it works for you. Harry says, hi, Dave and fellow Augies from AC3EK in Overlea, Maryland, northeast Baltimore County. Cool and middling humidity. Artwork says he's having a problem that it receives just fine, but when keyed on a repeater that I know my radio can hit, I didn't get a report back. This leads me to believe that my antenna is not transmitting. Antennas in this situation are reciprocal. If you can hear, you can transmit. Now, there are exceptions. If you create a receive-only antenna with a preamp, you know, this kind of thing. But normally you can do that. The first thing I would check is the tone. Make sure you have the right CCTSS tone programmed in for that channel. Because if it doesn't hear that tone, it won't do anything. It may be, and this is rare, that it wants your radio to also receive a tone. That happens too. If you're in an area, usually this is in populated areas, where you've got people who, there's lots of stuff on the air, and you hear a lot of garbage from other stations, and really what you want to hear is your repeater. You'll put a CCTSS tone right in your radio so that the repeater will transmit that tone. Normally it's your handheld that transmits that tone. Okay, now what you are doing, you say you know that your radio can hit it. How do you know that? Has it done it before, or are you at a proper distance? The repeater that our club uses is up in Cedar Edge. It's like 70 miles away. And it's around a corner from me. There's a mountain in the way, and the mountain's pretty close to me. So I can get into the repeater with no problem. Hearing it is an issue because it motorboats like crazy. And I've kind of given up on it, but you know, I've done nets. Sometimes it works fine. We do our Sunday evening net on that. We also have a Sunday evening, another thing. Okay, let's see. The IC703 internal tuner work on the mag loop to tune the antenna, or we'll need an external. No, you should be able to tune the mag loop without any tuner, either in or out of the radio. And if you're needing to use a tuner to get it to tune, then something's wrong. Because the very nature of the loop means that as you turn that capacitor, you will find a point where you can get very good SWR over a very narrow bandwidth. Okay. Doug Taylor, I think the fees are ridiculously low. However, after 65, you should be exempt. One of the problems, Doug, is that there are so many of us over 65 that they would have to raise the fees on everybody else. Another two commercials. It should be a lifetime license like the FAA. You should get a Veterans National Park Pass. I am a veteran, but I got mine by virtue of my age. And so it doesn't say veteran on it, but it does. I show it to the guy as we go in. Give him my driver's license too, so he can check the signature on the back. And the last guy I gave that to said, that looks like payment in full. Thank you for your service, or something like that. Okay, I am sorry about the commercials. Should be a lifetime license like the FAA. The FAA ham license is not lifetime. Oh dear, I have really messed this up here. Should get a veterans. Okay, yes. Is it worth building an antenna for 60 meter band CW? I have never operated on 60 meters. I think first of all, there are only 5 frequencies. And if you want to do digital, you have to put it right down the center of the band. And so that means there can only be one user at a time. You could put 30, 40, 50 CW signals in that bandwidth, but that's not the way they have it set up. So most antennas, most multiband antennas, don't operate on 60 meters. It's not harmonically related to 80 meters. So, okay. Is it worth building? Forest probably worth doing a dipole. You can always try. Making your own dipole is real cheap. Sean, KM6NFO, says our roads in Sacramento, California are awful. It's all that rain. Not sure where that tax money is going. It's building a freeway in Southern California. Tower space fees are $2,500 and up per month. Yes, it's very expensive to do this commercially. K4ZMF says just tuned in. Hello, everyone. Von Ziegel says, hi, Dave and the group. From Don, K6CD. Bill Meyer says, added some money to the chat revenue, which I enormously appreciate. Every little bit helps. If you can put $1 in, well, YouTube will take it all in their fees for $1. $5. Put $5 in. It will be very, very nice. This comes through to me with my regular monthly Google payment. And Bill, KA0OG, says, hi, Dave. Thanks for your weekly live streams. I really enjoy the weekly chats with you and the rest of the Augies. Thank you. Chris Goodman, one should be thankful that hams do not have to retake their licensing tests every 7 to 10 years like physicians do. Yeah, really. For the folks with commercials, I pay the $11.99 a month to YouTube and get 0 commercials. I'm retired and watch only YouTube, so it's convenient for me, but understand your frustration. I also pay for YouTube Premium. And the reason I started doing that, there was this young man who played the piano, and he did just a fantastic job. And halfway through one of his pieces, a commercial would pop up, totally spoiling the mood and interrupting the flow of what's going on. And so I commented to him. I says, these mid-roll commercials are terrible. And he wrote back and said, this is my only income. I have to advertise. I go, well, okay, you know, I guess when you're young, you've got one foot in your parents' house, and what YouTube pays can actually be an income. As for me, it's about 20% of my retirement income comes from YouTube. If you add up everything, including the ARRL, it's about 45%. Okay. Ham radio is a licensed privilege, not an inalienable right. I agree with you. There are a lot of people who don't agree with you. The reason I agree with you is because it is a limited resource. Now, if you look at the rules of logistics, and I remember going through all of this in the Air Force, if you look at the rules of logistics, what do you focus on and what do you tightly control? The answer is that which is rare. Okay? So if you've got a resource that is rare, like jet fuel, or for that matter, jets, you control them very, very, very carefully. You wrap them in a lot of regulations. You've got a lot of people checking them, doing all this kind of stuff like that. You carefully control that which is rare. And the airwaves are rare. There's way too little of them for the demand that could be placed on them. And a lot of people take the FCC rule that in an utter emergency, you can use any radio communications available to you, and misunderstand that that means utter emergency, like you're in a burning house or something, or in an airplane that's going down, whatever. By the way, the FAA does monitor 121.5 megahertz nationwide, and that's the frequency you go to if you're in the middle of nowhere, flying over the middle of nowhere, and you've got a problem. And that's the one you use. Okay, but I do agree with the idea that spectrum is a limited, very limited resource, hard to get. And so, and this takes you back to 1912 when the Titanic, instead of going horizontally, went vertically. And it was such a big, hairy deal. Jacob Astor, I think, was on it. There were some real bigwigs who lost their lives there. So, yes, that meant interest. The Senate, the United States Senate, conducted hearings in situ in New York in the days immediately following the disaster. They didn't wait 6 months. They did it immediately. And the radioman who lived, I guess lost his feet or something. Anyway, he was brought in from his hospital bed to testify. And the outcome of this was the Federal Radio Commission and a number of regulations such that all ships had to have receivers capable of receiving 500 kilohertz. And that lasted for better part of a century. They don't anymore because the ships all use satellite communications, Marisat. So from that, they went into the name changed as the role changed. They started to pick up responsibility for all forms of communication. So you had both radio and wireline. And they were the regulatory agency for the telephone companies, and more than one. And they regulated the competition and so on by signing areas. You didn't necessarily live in an AT&T area. It was usually General Telephone that took care of you otherwise. Had a long history to that. Well, when cable came along, their argument was that nothing was transmitted over the air. So it didn't matter what was on cable. And that's kind of still the attitude about that. But they are definitely FCC down here. I'm glad they don't force retesting. Yes, I think we would lose a lot of people from the hobby. Yeah, it is kind of unusual. I mean, we are the only radio service where we can design, build, test our own radios from our own designs. We have to meet the spurious emission requirements, but there's standard circuits that do that. And people are experimenting all the time. I just picked this up. It's called a whisper transmitter by Zactec. Came out of Finland or something like that. And it is hooked up to my 40-meter dipole, which also works on 15. I'm going to hook up to a different antenna tomorrow, and or the next day, and I'll do 4 bands at a time. Okay, let's see. Dave, can you explain phase modulation? Yes. Oh, let's see. We've not been able to afford a working car for over a year now. Okay, I understand. It does happen. When we were kids, or 5 kids, my dad started his job as a school teacher down in Eagle Rock. And one of the great fun things of the day was all of us piled into the one car we had and took Daddy to work. And then came home, finished our breakfast, and went to school ourselves. We had one car for a long time. Finally, my dad gave in to the urgings of a friend and purchased a little Volkswagen Bug for about $1,900. And I learned to drive in that thing and in an old CJ2A Jeep, which was the first civilian model of the Jeep. And, it took us a while. Dad did not make a lot of money as a school teacher. And Mom didn't work with 5 kids at home. So we got by. We rented a house for many, many years. Finally, Dad had enough to buy a house. Anyway. Stephen Arbogast was my current project in electronics. I've got a little kit I want to build. Is this it? I don't think so. No. It's like a 4-band transceiver. I've been working on taxes today, so I've got papers piled everywhere. That's what I'm working on. Rodimus Prime, high from the last frontier, Alaska. Yep, also apparently the last frontier for Boeing's quality system. Iola Mola. Thank you, sir, for the interesting information over the years. Good luck. Thank you. Optical Man Jeff. Dave, can you explain phase modulation? Yes, absolutely, I can, but not in the 5 minutes remaining. Jeff, would you do me a favor and send an email to askdave, all one word, at arrl.org, O-R-G, with that request, and I'll do a video about it. It's very similar to FM, and a phase transmitter can be decoded by an FM receiver and vice versa. In mathematical terms, phase modulation is the first derivative of an FM modulated signal. I don't know if that helps, but a little calculus there. It's the first derivative. James, thanks very much. At my home, the noise floor is S7 to S9. Are there any ways to reduce that? Yes. Grounding. I'm running a vertical, but we'll be putting up an NFED half wave or NFED random wire next week. Grounding, 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 grounding. Make sure that your radio. Go to Home Depot, buy a ground rod, get a sledgehammer and gently pound the thing in right outside the window where your ham shack is. Run a stout ground wire, like number 2 or something like that, from your station single point ground, where you bring all your station equipment, down to the ground rod. Then bring your coax down to the ground rod and put a lightning arrestor there. The lightning arrestors I kind of like most are these Alpha Delta. This is a model TT3G50. You can pick them up from DX Engineering or something like that. Grounding, grounding, grounding will make much of that noise go away, because you're keeping your system kind of cocooned in the ground inside your station, and outside, the first thing where you can get anything into it is the antenna, okay? Whereas if you just bring the cable in here, the cable, the outer part of the cable is pretending to be an antenna, and will bring in all kinds of gunk. So grounding will really help, and I'm going to go overtime if I don't get off that. Okay. Bill Myers, KE0OG. Dave, I'm still hoping that you can find a time slot monthly, perhaps. Oh, separate live stream where you're on the radio. And yeah, no, that definitely will have to be non-monetized. I'd like to get one of your cards showing you made a contact. Great. Optical Man Jeff has put $15 in the chat revenue and says, thanks, Dave, for all you do. It is very much appreciated. And thank you. I appreciate that. Ideogram. Ideogram. That's what a Chinese symbol is. That's a whole word. It's an ideogram. And a couple versions of Japanese, or 3 ways of writing down Japanese, are ideograph based. The third one, the number of symbols used is small enough that you can create a Morse equivalent for each one. And that's Japanese Morse code. And what they deciphered with the purple stuff in World War II. Okay, and my apologies. Lots of my mom's side of the family worked at the Burbank Lockheed. Yes, that's where my uncle worked. A lot of those buildings are gone. Eesh. I apologize about the ads. I really do. Okay, Believers Community. I've only seen one. What is a Q? Okay, and we've got another from England. I think the commercial frequencies vary according to your location in the internet. No commercials here so far. Like I said, if you are a YouTube Premium member, you won't get that. Let's see, Believers Community. Hit the like button, please. Believers, you can skip it if you want. I always do to all of them on whatever YouTube channel I'm watching. Just had one pop in a commercial. Hello, Dave. From Jeremy. Pedro, they put the commercial right on top of your trend. That is bad. The reason I asked about monoband versus multiband NFEDs is because I made a homemade version of the DX Commander for 10 to 40 and it works extremely well. Yes, it will. It's a fan antenna. And so you can tune each band kind of independently. I want to get on 80 and I have an appropriately long enough and the monobanders are cheaper. Okay. Tone Squelch got me the other day. Midwest Preparedness. I like the commercials that are just like a half a second or something. Okay. I actually communicated with the repeater and I know that it sends a beep and a tail. Keep in mind it's the same radio. Well, good. Keep doing that. Keep working on it. Outdoor antenna. Indoor antennas are, it's rare. You can hit a repeater. Okay, Tom Cook, I've had a 1/2 inch ice on my number 14 THHN wire antennas. Never had one break. Good stuff. They will stretch on you a little bit because that is soft copper. Things work fine. Okay. The parameter Q. Oh! I thought you were talking about Q as in conspiracy theories. Q is not part of a conspiracy theory in electronics. I'll have to do a video on what Q is. It is the width of a resonance. It's how tightly tuned a circuit is. It is calculatable from the inductance, the capacitance, and the resistance. Okay, and more resistance will widen or lower the Q, which broadens the signal, which sometimes is good, sometimes it's not. Yeah. Leo, $10. Thank you, Dave, for sharing your knowledge with us Augies, and thanks for your service, brother. Thank you very much, Leo. I appreciate that. Chris Goodman, K0BLU, adds $10 to the chat revenue. Says, thank you for all you do, Dave. Thank you very much. And Noah, W1NGO, has added $5 to the chat revenue, and I want to point out that this is his very first super chat, which means the money part, on a live stream ever. So thank you. Welcome aboard. He says, "Thank you, Dave. If it wasn't for your videos and live streams, I wouldn't be an extra today. Love this hobby and this community." From W1NGO. Well, thank you very, very much. And isn't MM the first derivative of phase modulation? I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I mean, they are related mathematically. The phase cannot change more than about 180 degrees either way. So it's got a max amount of modulation. Whereas with FM, you can go as wide as you want. In fact, the wider you go, the better the signal-to-noise ratio. So I'm going to say thank you to all of you for being part of this great community. I encourage you, if you have not subscribed, to please do that. And if you want to add something to the chat revenue, it'll be open for another minute. Otherwise, you can go to dcasler.com/support and find a way there that works for you. So until we next meet, 73.